Following a lengthy development period marred with multiple delays, it has been a wild ride for Cyberpunk 2077 after the game finally launched in December 2020. While most fans believed it to be a Game of the Year candidate prior to its launch, the viewpoint changed once players got their hands on the title and experiencing the countless technical issues and bugs which held the experience back for many. Combined with a class action lawsuit, a data breach, reports of a terrible working environment at CD Projekt Red, and more controversies only continued to spoil things for fans. While CD Projekt Red continues to work on updates and fixes to the overall Cyberpunk 2077 experience, the biggest red flag for fans came shortly after launch when Sony made the decision to remove the game entirely from its digital storefront. Sony boss Jim Ryan recently clarified Cyberpunk's removal by attempting to protect its fans by not wanting to sell a broken product to consumers, though communication as to when the game would return was very hard to come by from either side. Since its removal from the PlayStation Store, neither Sony or CD Projekt Red could confirm a new timeframe. While updates and hot fixes continued to roll out over the past 6 months, new evidence continued to mount for the game's eventual return. PlayStation finally released a statement on its social media channels regarding the fate of Cyberpunk 2077. The company confirmed that the controversial game was available once more for purchase. The message also reassured players that work is continuing on the game with additional fixes and updates coming throughout the year, which lines up with what CD Projekt Red has continued to say. However, Sony also makes it clear that base PlayStation 4 users should steer clear of the game by recommending players play Cyberpunk 2077 on the PS4 Pro or PS5 consoles for the best experience overall. After continued changes to the previously released post-launch roadmap, CD Projekt Red continues to work on improving the overall experience. As next-gen console owners continue to wait for standalone versions, which is expected to launch in the second half of 2021, the company has warned fans that the planned DLC is likely going to get pushed back as fixes continue to take priority. Patch 1.23 just recently arrived for the much-maligned game, applying numerous fixes to quest progression problems, further improving stability and performance, visual clipping, and plenty more. CD Projekt Red has confirmed that the Cyberpunk 2077 PS5 upgrade will release at some point in the second half of this year. Anyone that owns the PS4 version of Cyberpunk 2077 digitally or on disc will be able to upgrade to the PS5 version at no additional cost. Specifics on how exactly Cyberpunk 2077 on PS5 will take advantage of the next-generation console's unique features or beefed-up hardware have yet to be detailed, but more information should come in the near future. Cyberpunk 2077's initial reviews from critics were mostly negative, but some were positive as those scores were based on the game running on powerful PC hardware. Presumably, Cyberpunk 2077 on PS5 will offer a similar experience to the PC version in terms of performance and graphics, so perhaps the next-gen version of the game will be its second chance at a first impression for console players. Plus, CD Projekt Red will continue to release Cyberpunk 2077 patches to continue addressing the game's lingering issues, so by the time the PS5 version is out, it should be in much better shape overall. Besides Cyberpunk 2077's next-gen version, fans of the game may have some brand new content to look forward to this year as well. While plans could certainly change, CD Projekt Red has confirmed that Cyberpunk 2077 DLC is in active development, and the belief was that this DLC would launch in 2021. Between the next-gen version of Cyberpunk 2077 and the potential DLC, the game could very well make a major comeback this year and improve its reputation. I didn't got the game yet because of these issues, and I will play it when the next-gen version, whenever it releases. And I will not recommend the PlayStation owners to get the game even if it is returned to the PlayStation Store. The game is not even nearly complete. If you are hyped for the game to play, you can choose to do that. That's your choice, but if you ask me if I will recommend the game, I will say no. And we can decide whether to get the game or not when the next-gen version releases. Moving forward, we have new situation drama here, as Demon's Souls fans that do not own a PS5 recently got excited over a potential PS4 port, though a reputable hacker explains why it is unlikely. While Demon's Souls on PlayStation 5 is a gorgeous game that seemingly makes use of the platform's power, some fans have been holding out hope for a PS4 version. As such, the discovery of a potential port in the PS4 database has seen Demon's Souls players reaching a new level of hype, though an insider has explained why this likely means nothing. With big games like the next God of War being cross-gen, as well as Horizon Forbidden West, Gran Turismo 7 and Spider-Man Miles Morales, it is easy to see why fans have had some confidence in this new leak. Still, with games like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart and Returnal being fully exclusive to PS5, there is just as much evidence against a last-gen port as well. Adding to the side of doubt, reputable leaker Lance McDonald has warned fans to eradicate their expectations regarding this big discovery. While a data-mined version of Demon's Souls for the PS4 may seem damning, the insider has shared a believable explanation for these strings of code. According to Lance, this actually could have been the original Demon's Souls, possibly brought over to PlayStation Now, so that Bluepoint Games could have an easier time developing the PS5 remake. It would explain why it has not yet released. According to Lance, these ports are purely for internal use only, as they are never intended for release to the public. He then doubles down on this claim in a follow-up tweet, saying that they would be willing to put money on this theory being accurate. After all, a backport would be an odd thing to do with a potential system seller like Demon's Souls PS5. With this supposed port also dating back a number of years, it is even easier to believe that this code was left over from Bluepoint Games' development process. While not confirmed, this seems like the most realistic scenario that fans have come up with thus far. A final tweet from Lance sees him reiterating that the old version of Demon's Souls will likely never be sold on PlayStation Now. Doing so could take attention away from the PS5 remake, as being able to play the original may keep some fans from wanting to purchase the new console. The developer version could be incomplete as well, as it was likely never intended for a retail release. While the rumors of the PS4 backport were fun for a time, it seems more likely than not that they will turn out to be false. While this is understandably disappointing for those that have been unable to buy a PS5, it would be best to keep this line of thinking. With no evidence for a PS4 version of the Demon's Souls remake beyond the database entry, last-gen users should be more doubtful than excited. Last month's release of Resident Evil Village has been a huge success for Capcom, especially since the latest installment to the survival horror series has received mostly positive reviews. Although some players are still probably exploring everything Resident Evil Village offers, many are now wondering what's next for the franchise, especially now that rumors remain persistent about a new game called Resident Evil Outrage. Much to the disappointment of fans, Capcom is yet to confirm the existence of Resident Evil Outrage. However, despite the lack of an official announcement, it is likely that the Outrage is in development, given that the rumors were based on the leaked information after the huge Capcom ransomware attack last year. So now, for players wondering what Resident Evil Outrage is all about, here is a breakdown of every rumor so far. Every time a new Resident Evil game is about to be announced, the biggest question that fans always have is, who will be the game's protagonist? Of course, this question is understandable given that for the past 25 years, Capcom has introduced several characters to the Resident Evil franchise, each having its own fanbase. According to rumors released by the website Biohazard Cast, Resident Evil Outrage will see the return of former STARS member Rebecca Chambers. For the uninitiated, Rebecca Chambers was first introduced in the original Resident Evil game before starring as the lead protagonist in Resident Evil 0. Since then, Rebecca hasn't been involved as a major character in a Resident Evil game, and if rumors are to be believed, Resident Evil Outrage will be the game that will see her return to the franchise. Shortly after Rebecca was revealed, prominent Resident Evil leaker Aesthetic Gamer posted a tweet claiming that Capcom may be changing Rebecca's race from white to Asian, and the studio has already hired a Japanese model for Rebecca in Outrage. Additionally, Aesthetic Gamer also released a tweet claiming that they heard another rumor about Resident Evil Outrage's second playable character. According to Aesthetic Gamer, Leon Kennedy could be joining Rebecca in Outrage. However, the leaker clarified that they remain unsure of this info, given that it did not come from their usual sources. Whether or not this is true, the notion of Leon joining forces with Rebecca is not that far-fetched given that the two have already met in the CGI film Resident Evil Vendetta, which is considered semi-canon to the video game franchise. While many video games focus on a single protagonist, the Resident Evil franchise has featured multiple playable characters from the start. The first Resident Evil game featured Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine as the main playable characters, whereas Resident Evil 2 had Leon S. Kennedy and Claire Redfield. Throughout the course of the franchise, the bulk of the main series Resident Evil games have featured at least two, if not more, playable characters, and it seems that will possibly hold true for the leaked Resident Evil, Outrage as well. Resident Evil Outrage was outed by the Capcom ransomware attack, and its existence has since been backed up by reputable Resident Evil leaker Aesthetic Gamer. They believe that Resident Evil Outrage will be a Time Switch exclusive game that will likely feature Rebecca Chambers as the main character. However, they have also heard that the game will have a second playable character in the form of fan favorite Leon S. Kennedy. Throughout the Resident Evil games, Rebecca has had far more interactions with Chris than she has had with Leon. In fact, the first Resident Evil game saw Chris and Rebecca run into each other in the mansion, with players even having to take control of Rebecca for a brief period to cure Chris of poison. Rebecca and Chris appear together again in the aforementioned Biohazard the stage play, and she appears in the Resident Evil Vendetta CG film alongside both Chris and Leon. One reason why Capcom may decide to go with Leon instead of Chris in Resident Evil Outrage is due to Chris having just appeared in Resident Evil Village. Chris Redfield is a major character in the ongoing Resident Evil storyline, whereas Leon is nowhere to be seen. In the Capcom leak last year, it has been revealed that the studio is planning to release Resident Evil Outrage this year, just months after Resident Evil Village. However, since Capcom did not announce Resident Evil Outrage at E3 2021, the studio has likely decided to push back the game's release to sometime in 2022. As for the platforms where Resident Evil Outrage will release in, the leak unveiled that it could be exclusive to the Nintendo Switch for a limited time, hinting that it will eventually release to other consoles as well. Though whether or not it will last gen or current gen remains a mystery. Maybe it can be revealed as a multiplat, and may be revealed during the next PlayStation event or in the near future. Speaking of horror, Death Stranding developers, Kojima Productions, post job listings for a variety of different positions for an unannounced action video game. With the success of the esoteric action delivery game Death Stranding, Hideo Kojima's new production company, Kojima Productions, has already cemented itself as a strong independent studio. Many have been curious as to what Kojima's next game might be, given the unique nature of Death Stranding, and the video game director's penchant for complex stories. Fans may just get their answer soon, as Kojima Productions appears to be hiring for a number of positions in order to fill out the team for a new, unannounced video game. Hideo Kojima is likely among the most well-known video game developers of all time. Best known for his work on the massively popular Metal Gear Solid franchise, he worked closely with Konami for nearly 30 years, leaving the studio in 2015 to create his own production company, just 4 years after being appointed the vice president of Konami Digital Entertainment. His unique approach to storytelling has netted him many dedicated fans, and the curiosity around his releases has heightened after Death Stranding showed that his studio would be continuing his legacy of quintessentially Kojima games. It appears that Kojima Productions has begun development of something new, with job postings for a variety of different positions. There are listings for character artists, animators, producers, and sound designers, all for an unannounced title. The listings ask applicants to talk about the most interesting games they have played recently, as well as what technological trends they are following in the industry. Considering there are jobs for designers and network programmers, as well as project managers, it seems possible that this is a completely new title, rather than something operating in Death Stranding's universe. The listings are for full-time positions, with the job descriptions giving a window into Kojima Productions' workday, stating that working hours are basically at 10 o'clock, and are left to the discretion of the individual, suggesting a fairly unstructured work schedule. Many are pointing out that due to the wide array of job listings for the game, as well as the types of listings, it is likely that the game is in extremely early development. This theory is somewhat backed up by the fact that the jobs were posted to LinkedIn only 2 weeks ago, although many applications have already been put in. While the jobs posted seem to indicate that Kojima Productions is working on something else entirely, there is a faint possibility that they are working on a sequel to Death Stranding. Given how the game wrapped up though, and considering the soon-to-be-released Death Stranding director's cut, it would likely have to be a story that takes place in the same universe, but not necessarily focused on the same characters. If Hideo Kojima has a brand new game in store for fans though, this could mean there will be some exciting announcements from the studio in the coming years. A few years ago, Kojima Productions also hired for their new studio in Amsterdam near Guerrilla Games. So it may also be a fuel to the Silent Hill and Blue Box Studios situation. Death Stranding was Hideo Kojima's first game after leaving Konami and founding his own development studio, Kojima Productions. Death Stranding was received favorably by critics and players alike, which has led to a next-generation version of the game being announced at this year's E3 conference. The game originally released on PlayStation 4 before making its way to PC after PlayStation's exclusivity period expired. Now, it was revealed that Death Stranding Director's Cut would be making its way to the PlayStation 5, when it was announced during the Summer Game Fest kickoff livestream that had a Death Stranding Director's Cut trailer that cheekily referenced Kojima's Metal Gear Solid series. While Death Stranding started as a PlayStation 4 exclusive, there was no indication if its next-gen release would also come to PC or finally bring the game to Xbox. However, a new rating for Death Stranding Director's Cut may indicate that the game will be exclusive to the PlayStation 5. The discovery comes from the game's rating on the official website for the Entertainment Software Rating Board. Notably, the only platform listed for the game's rating is the PlayStation 5, which could indicate its renewed exclusivity. Of course, the official trailer for Death Stranding Director's Cut only listed PlayStation 5 as a release platform, which also adds evidence to the ESRB rating being true. I am very excited about Death Stranding Director's Cut's announcement, however. It will be interesting to see what improvements and additional content all come to the game. It will also be curious to see how Death Stranding takes advantage of the PlayStation 5's DualSense controller and all of its additional features. It remains to be seen, but here's hoping that it does, because the pairing of the feedback-intensive Death Stranding and the DualSense might be an even better match than Sam and his Bridge Baby. One of the more notable aspects of Death Stranding's gameplay is that Sam can hardly walk 5 feet without stumbling. The combination of rough, uneven terrain and the heavy cargo carried throughout each delivery consistently puts Sam's balance to the ultimate test. Using the shoulder buttons, players must routinely shift Sam's weight to the left or right to prevent him from taking a cargo-damaging dive. On the PS4, this mechanic loses its novelty after a few hours. It doesn't matter if Sam appears to be on the verge of wiping out, or is only slightly leaning over one way. Every pull of the trigger to balance him out feels the same. However, with the DualSense adaptive triggers, Death Stranding on PS5 could make players not just see the varying levels of Sam's struggles to stay upright, but feel them too. Hypothetically, when utilizing the shoulder buttons, differing levels of resistance could arise based on Sam's current position and cargo load. A slight misstep could call for only a tiny pinch of pressure, while a serious stumble on a steep surface may require a more forceful pull on each trigger. The DualSense adaptive pressure itself could also be a useful tool when it comes to gauging Sam's balance. For example, players may hold one or both triggers down while maneuvering through steep terrain, during which they might feel substantial pressure on the shoulder buttons. But upon reaching more even land, they could feel that resistance lighten up, thus signaling to the player that it's okay to let up on the triggers. The DualSense controller could also be of great use while traversing Death Stranding's rough world, especially when it comes to navigating through fields of ghastly BTs. Typically, one must rely on BB and the Outrage scanner to get a general idea of where they are. However, the DualSense haptic capabilities could help unlock another tool in Sam's arsenal that, despite being prevalent in the story, is surprisingly absent in gameplay. The game establishes that Sam suffers from a condition called dooms that allows him to sense surrounding BTs. Unfortunately, this ability isn't well reflected in gameplay. A slight rumble when coming into contact with a BT is perhaps the closest Death Stranding comes to emulating Sam's extrasensory skill, but it's less of a tool for locating and avoiding the phantom foes, and more of an indicator that the player is about to get caught by one. As evidenced by games like Astro's Playroom, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and Returnal, the DualSense haptic feedback can produce vibrations ranging from quietly faint to shockingly violent. Ideally, Death Stranding could take advantage of the different degrees of rumble feedback by allowing Sam's special sense to be represented through them. In short, the controller would vibrate when Sam is around a BT, but how intense it is would depend on the distance between the two. If one feels the rumblings of the controller progressively get more intense, they could heed that as a warning to find another way around. Another admittedly less important, albeit fun way to implement the DualSense would be to use the controller's built-in microphone. Players regularly need to soothe BB throughout Death Stranding, and the microphone could allow players to do so not by simply rocking the controller side to side, but by also singing or talking in a calm voice. It may not sound entirely necessary, but then again, neither does a gameplay mechanic revolving around rocking a baby. It's not yet known what new additions Death Stranding Director's Cut will bring to Hideo Kojima's abstract title, but hopefully PS5 DualSense integration is one of them. The revolutionary controller's features could go a long way in making Death Stranding more immersive than ever, and if there's one thing that Hideo Kojima is known for, it's finding new and creative ways to make the hardware a game is being played on as much of a part of the experience as the game itself, for example in Metal Gear Solid games as we have discussed in a previous video. Impossible to miss, as they included things like Sam jumping into a cardboard box. I have been wondering if some Metal Gear-like action could be coming to Death Stranding. While this is still not confirmed, the ESRB's increased focus on stealth takedowns in its updated rating certainly supports the theory. In the original version of Death Stranding, players could perform takedowns on mules, the human enemies of the game. In these takedowns, Sam would sneak up behind the enemies and take them down with his strand. This same strangling is referred to in the ESRB rating, though curiously, it was not mentioned in the rating for the original game. This is an entirely new line, and it does seem to suggest that Kojima Productions is doubling down on stealth. As for what this could mean, perhaps Sam could have more refined CQC skills like Solid Snake or Big Boss. This could mean more takedowns, quicker stealth attacks, or new abilities. While the stealth in the original Death Stranding is serviceable, and works well in the Vietnam encounter with Cliff, it is nowhere near the quality of Metal Gear Solid. Given all the references to the iconic series in the announcement of the PS5 version, Kojima could be hinting that stealth combat will be the star of this expanded version. The new line also mentions stages, which seems a bit odd given the open-world nature of the game. The description writer could be referring to the underground base Sam enters in the Death Stranding Director's Cut reveal, as players may explore several locations like this in the PS5 version. While gamers do not see the mule base being cleared, it certainly looks as if Sam could be securing the area to gather more resources for bridges. These levels could be entirely built around stealth tools and mechanics, and if there are enough of them, this new line from the ESRB would make sense. Though the line could just be referring to the old Strand takedowns, it would be odd to include the comment in the new rating and not the old one. With new Metal Gear Solid content from Hideo Kojima highly unlikely, extra stealth elements in Death Stranding could be a good compromise. And it is also good that it is a PlayStation 5 exclusive, and not coming to other platforms. And that's all for the video guys. Like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics, and if you want to contribute for the growth of the channel, the link to my PayPal in the video's description and in the channel banner. Donations are always appreciated, and thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then from SMPV it's goodbye.